So let's talk about trading card games again. So after the well reception I got on my pre-release video, I decided to do a little bit of history to see how we got to today in our favorite little hobby of trading card games. So before we get to how we got to today, let's look back in time to see the history of trading card games. Before we get started, let's first define what exactly is a trading card game for the two of you that may have stumbled onto this video. A trading card game is a game that players with pre-constructed decks duel it out to find a winner. The earliest form of a TCG was a couple baseball games back in the 1930s. The earliest example, what we would consider a TCG, is Wizards of the Coast's Magic the Gathering. Released back in 1993, it has a pretty interesting development history. To summarize it, Richard Garfield, while studying at the University of Pennsylvania, had the idea of making Magic the Gathering while developing a board game called Robo Rally. But at the time, Wizards of the Coast was just a small company, so the idea of manufacturing a board game with physical pieces didn't seem like a good idea. So he went back to the drawing board and was thinking about making a game that could be played that was quick and portable, that could be played during conventions or while waiting for your DM for your D&D session. He had the idea of a game called The Five Magics. I wonder where this would go. So he went back to the work and started developing what we would call Magic the Gathering. Fun fact, the original name of the game was going to be called the Mana Clash, which, not gonna lie, was a pretty badass name. Then in August of 1993, at Gen Con in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Magic the Gathering made its introduction to the world, and the success was instant. Wizards couldn't keep up with the demand as they sold out all of their supply of 10 million cards by October of 1993. I mean, it's not hard to see that people were just rushing to make a beeline to get their hands on this hot new thing. And because Magic the Gathering was this new thing, companies including Wizards themselves would compete in this market. In 1999, Wizards of the Coast would get the rights to Nintendo's new IP turned TCG, Pokemon, beating Magic the Gathering sales for the first time. Soon later, Konami would come into the scene with Yu-Gi-Oh! To take Wizards' thunder and become the third pillar of the TCG world. And that's the brief history of TCGs, primarily Magic the Gathering. Now let's talk about my personal history with the TCGs that I've played.
It's time to duel!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my first ever TCG I ever got into. With a younger cousin and both of us in elementary school when the anime first came out to Cartoon Network, it's no surprise that we got hooked onto this game. I still have distinct memories going to Kmart when that was still around to buy Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. God, I still remember the tins. And since we mostly played against each other, we used to just buy cards together and build decks that way. The Wild West era of Yu-Gi-Oh! I sadly dropped out of Yu-Gi-Oh! When I got into middle school because unfortunately though, in my middle school you get picked on if you were caught playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And since me and my cousin didn't play it anymore, I dropped it as well as early into Yu-Gi-Oh! GX started airing here into the West. While I wasn't playing the card game, I would still play video games like Duels of the Roses, Forbidden Memories, and GX Tag Duel to still get my Yu-Gi-Oh! Fix. After a while, in 2016, Yu-Gi-Oh! Will come back into my life with the initial release of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for mobile devices, especially at its launch with its more nostalgic release going back into the early days of the game. Then in 2017, I would come back to the trading card game when my friend Kenny would introduce me to his friends that he made at a local game shop and I never went to before. But it was so much fun picking up the game again after such a long time away, but oh boy did I have a lot to learn. Wait, so the fusion deck is now called an extra deck? Synchro what? Pendulum summons? My guy, how the fuck did you fill up this board in one turn? Why do we keep getting OTK'd? And while I don't spend as much time playing the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG as much as I used to because I started playing more card games in recent years, I have to thank Yu-Gi-Oh! For being my first TCG, and everybody remembers their first. Magic the Gathering is one of the most influential games to ever come out, but I never really heard of it growing up. I blame the fact that at such a young age, unless it was on television, either commercials or a part of an anime series like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, I wouldn't know about it. And that's what Magic the Gathering was to me as a kid, a non-entity. No one around me played it, let alone had it shown it to me. The only thing I knew about Magic the Gathering was that back in the day, Magic cards were in Yu-Gi-Oh! But they were changed to spell cards because Wizards would have sued them if they didn't make the change. Plus, when I was going back to Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2017, the card shop I frequented, most of the players were just Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. Sadly, after that shop shut down, there was this new game store that was opening down the street. This store was the polar opposite of my previous store. This store was more focused on OCGs like Dragon Ball and One Piece, and of course, Magic the Gathering. Now, I was at the 1% as Yu-Gi-Oh! Wasn't their main draw anymore. I tried to get the job there, but after telling them I didn't know how to play any other games aside from Yu-Gi-Oh!, I wasn't the selected candidate. But it didn't stop my cousin, God bless him, for giving me some Magic the Gathering dual decks to get me started and get the game a chance. Sadly, I wasn't exactly in the mood to learn how to play Magic the Gathering. That was until 2024, where I made a video talking about getting some Fallout Commander decks because I was going through a bit of a Fallout high as the TV show was coming out on Prime Video. Seriously though, I can't wait for Season 2. I bought the Caesar's Legion and Dogme decks purely for the card art and concept alone. After a while, I figured I should learn how to play these cards, and that's when I stumbled on the vast amount of fun Commander game videos, and I figured I should give Magic a shot. I downloaded and streamed Magic Arena, got through the tutorial, and now I could see Magic the Gathering being my new favorite trading card game. Now that we talked about some iconic TCGs, let's talk about a new kid on the block, Lorcana. Lorcana is Ravensburg's TCG based on iconic Disney characters, locations, and even songs. I first stumbled upon it when Team APS mentioned it on a skit. I wasn't too interested in it until I saw the amazing card art that Lorcana has, primarily Brave Little Tailor Mickey from the very first set. Afterwards, I went searching for my own cards, and like most hot new TCGs, the early sets are usually plagued with stock issues and expected to pay a bit of a pretty penny. My first two decks I bought were from the very first two sets. Lorcana became the family TCG because it took the Magic the Gathering setup of mana ramping and drastically simplified it for anybody to get into. It's a great first time TCG for someone that's a little bit more intimidated with more legacy TCGs. It became my family's entry level drug to get into other card games, and ever since then, I want to thank Ravensburg for making Lorcana and bringing it into my family's life. If I were to get a group of people around my age, born around 1995, and asked them how many of them had Pokemon cards but never played the actual TCG, I wouldn't be surprised if at least half of those people raised their hand. For me, I've always stumbled on Pokemon cards in my lifetime, mostly people just giving them to me. Like, yeah, I knew this was a card game, but when you're a kid and the only card game people were playing was Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's no surprise I wasn't exactly going out of my way to learn how to play it. Plus, it didn't help either that when I was growing up, I loved the Pokemon video games. For me, Pokemon was video games as Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the card game. I did actively start collecting Pokemon cards, but now I finally decided to start giving the actual game a shot. I finally played my first game of the Pokemon TCG when I finally busted open that Battle Academy set I had and played a couple games and went from there. Out of all the card games, this is one I actually prefer collecting over playing, but when I do play it, I generally do have a great time playing. Now that I've told you my TCG of choices and my personal experiences and backstories around them, I feel like it's time to take a quick glance at the trading card games that are no longer with us or continue in spirit through its successors. Like I said, once MTG hit the scene, there were TCGs coming into the market just to take a piece of that pie, especially in the late 90s and 2000s. So let's just take a look at some of these failed trading card games that are no longer in print. We had Illuminati New World Order, released in 1984, Jihad. Don't worry, they changed the name to Vampire the Eternal Struggle in 1994. The Sim City card game released in 1995. The Star Wars customizable card game were also released in 1995, which later would be followed up with Star Wars Unlimited. Killer Instinct, the Neon Genesis Evangelion card game, but released back in 1998. Dragon Quest to TCG in 2000. Sailor Moon got a trading card game in 2000. Fun fact, there is a Harry Potter trading card game to market and advertise the first Harry Potter movie, and it was made by none other than Wizards of the Coast, which means that the Wizards at the Coast made a trading card game based on Wizards at the School. What's going on here? There was the Dot Hack Enemy trading card game, which, fun fact, I actually went out of my way to buy two of the starter decks because I do have a little bit of attachment to the Dot Hack universe. I grew up playing the first Dot Hack game a lot on the PlayStation 2. Never finished it. I've always wanted to go and finish the IMOQ games. As someone who loves the Dot Hack art style made by Sadamoto, who also did the Evangelion art, I had little excuse to not buy this. So it was kind of neat to get the the trading card game based on Dot Hack. So I will plan on doing some Dot Hack content in the future. We had the Berserk trading card game released in 2003, made by Konami. There was the SpongeBob trading card game, also released in 2003. World of Warcraft got involved with the trading card game scene in 2006. I do know that some of these trading cards are worth a lot of money because they came with a code for a mount. So if you happen to have one of those, you might be sitting on a gold mine. There was the Kingdom Hearts trading card game released in 2007, which... Funny story about that. I remember I went to Kmart with my dad to buy something. I don't remember what it was, but I saw the trading card game section where they had Kingdom Hearts, and I remember thinking like, well, Chain of Memories had a card game mechanic. Why don't they just make physical cards? And I bought a pack, and all I remember pulling from it was a Fairy Harp Keyblade and that was about it. I honestly thought I dreamt the whole scenario because like nobody knew what I was talking about when I mentioned the Kingdom Hearts trading card game. And also, there was this weird thing about all these Bible related trading card games. Why the hell there's so many trading card games based on the Bible? I never understood. I didn't fucking know that Jesus Christ's return was a fucking saga in Magic the Gathering. But what if you wanted to make some green while playing card games? You see, one of the things that Wizards didn't expect when making Magic the Gathering was two things: meta and market. Anybody who's ever picked up Magic knows about the alpha cards, mostly known as the Power 9. These cards were notoriously broken and can easily win you a couple of games, if you have them in your hand, let alone 4 copies of them. So of course there became a demand to have these cards in your possession. But since these cards were mostly printed in 93's early sets, it's clear that Wizards didn't want to make more copies of them. People soon held on to their Black Lotuses, and the card value skyrocketed so much that the last recorded selling of the Black Lotus just hit $3 million. And that market has only gotten more involved as time went on, especially with Pokemon cards. Back in the day, I used to make the joke that I never saw people play Pokemon, only just pull cards, and I wasn't too far off from it. During the pandemic, people were looking for other ways to make money while stuck in their homes. This birthed the Pokemon vendor scene of people just making a living of just buying and selling Pokemon cards. So what determines the value of a card? Well, you already have the basic fundamentals. Is it a rare card pulled from a booster pack? Is it a promo card from an event or product? Has the card ever been reprinted? Is it competitively viable? And finally, is the card out of print and won't ever be printed again? For example, going back to Magic for a second, Wizards has this thing called a reserve list, basically saying that they cannot reprint these cards because it would piss off the secondary market, as people were planning on buying their Bugattis with their Black Lotuses. The only drawback from this is, like most things, people will try to beat out the masses by buying all of the stock of a product before giving everybody else a chance to buy for themselves. If you collected cards back in the day, you might have an expensive card sitting in your basement, attic, or even a binder right now. My only valuable card that is worth around the $100 range is my Enchanted Olaf from Lorcana. Thankfully, enchanted cards are just pretty variants of cards, so you could play the non-enchanted versions to protect your pretty cardboard. But Danny, what if I wanted to play card games, but I don't want to spend money on buying physical cards and leaving my house for games? Well, good news, my friend, then you are set. Companies like Pokemon, Konami, and Wizards realized that there's a market of people that wanted to play their game in a digital format. Back in the day, we had games like 1997's Magic the Gathering for the PC, Pokemon TCG released for the Game Boy Color in '98 in Japan and 2000s in North America, and there's a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh games for you to pick. The PlayStation Yu-Gi-Oh games use mechanics similar to the trading card game, but most of the time they were pretty drastic experiences, but unique in their own way that helps them stand out. After the success of Pokemon Go on mobile, it was no surprise that Konami will follow up with their own mobile version of their game, more geared to nostalgic millennials like myself, and release Duel Links with its smaller format, quicker games, and a throwback to nostalgic Duel Monster days back in 2017. Only then to release a more authentic Yu-Gi-Oh simulator called Master Duel in 2022. Wizards would release Magic Arena in 2018 for mobile, and Pokemon would release the Pokemon TCG Live app in 2023. All these games can be played on your phone anywhere at any time, so you can experience these games whenever you want with little to no money involved. After watching this video, you might be asking yourself, alright Danny, I'm in. How do I get started? Well, I recommend you start by picking a game. Play any of the free mobile games to at least get a feel of the game and see what you like. When you're ready to pick up the cards in real life, I suggest you get started with a pre-constructed decks. These decks are ready to play right out of the box and can get you started. Card games are always trying to get new people into their game, so many of them have starter products that you and a friend can learn to play. Once you have some cards, I recommend you respect yourself and get some much needed accessories like sleeves, playmat, binder, and a deck box. These can range in price, so get what you can with your budget. And finally, find a place where people play card games. Of course, look for any local game stores in your area. Hell, even libraries are sometimes a place where fellow wizards come together to cast some spells. And if you do find an LGS, check out their stuff. Go to the store, meet the people, check out what events they have, like pre-releases, and get yourself involved, as they're super fun to attend. Thank you so much for watching this video. What card games are you currently playing? What games have you dropped or maybe picked back up again? Have you gotten someone into a card game? And thanks again for watching. I hope you drop a like and sub to see more content like this. Thank you so much, guys. Till next time. See ya.